I texted getting married, but still love you to my ex the night before my wedding, and somehow my fiancé saw it on our honeymoon. Like, who even does that? I'm Clara, I'm 26, and I honestly never thought I'd be the girl crying in a luxury resort bathroom while my new husband gives me the silent treatment. But here we are. It all started 2 years ago when I met Victor at this charity gala my company forced me to attend. I was working in this corporate office in Seattle handling client accounts, basically being everyone's assistant while pretending I had an important title. Victor walked in looking like money, not hot exactly, but powerful. At 42, he had that silver fox thing going on, designer watch, custom suit, and this confidence that made everyone else look like boys playing dress up. I'd just gotten out of this crazy, intense relationship with Daniel. We'd been on again, off again since college, and it was all passion and drama and fighting and making up. Victor was different, stable, established. He owned property development companies and took me to restaurants in Portland where they don't even put prices on the menu. On our third date, he gave me these diamond earrings that cost more than my rent. I won't lie, the age difference was weird at first. My dad kept making awkward jokes about Victor being closer to his age than mine. My younger sister straight up asked if I was in it for the money. But honestly, I got used to it. Victor worshipped me, and I liked being taken care of for once. When he proposed after a year of dating, I said yes without hesitation. The ring was huge, exactly what I'd casually mentioned wanting during a window shopping trip months earlier. He actually listened to me, unlike Daniel, who'd get me random gifts that were really for himself. But then came the wedding planning and things got weird. I started having these dreams about Daniel. I hadn't looked at his social media in ages. I'd blocked him after our last breakup when he'd shown up at my apartment in Tacoma at 2 a.m., drunk and crying. But one night, after Victor fell asleep, I unblocked Daniel just to see. I told my best friend Lila about it over brunch. It's just pre-wedding jitters, she said. Everyone gets them. Yeah, but I'm not calling anything off, I said. Victor is amazing. He's planning this incredible honeymoon in Bali. We're looking at houses in that gated community in Bellevue. Is it, though? Lila asked, giving me that look, the one that says she knows me too well. Of course it is, I snapped. You think I want to go back to dating guys who can barely pay their rent, who forget my birthday or cheat on me? The thing is, I was happy mostly. I liked the lifestyle Victor gave me. I liked not worrying about money. I liked posting photos of the expensive restaurants and weekend trips to Vancouver and watching the likes roll in. What I didn't like was listening to Victor talk for hours about his investment properties or his golf games or his opinions on wine. God, it was so boring. But I'd gotten good at faking interest, asking the right questions, making him feel smart and important. One night, Victor mentioned the prenup. Just a formality, he said, sliding the document across the table. My lawyer insists, given my assets. I skimmed it, not really understanding the legal jargon. This seems complicated, I said. Don't worry about it, Victor replied, refilling my wine glass. It's standard. I signed it. What else was I going to do? Make a fuss and look like I was after his money? A week before the wedding, Victor started talking about having kids soon. I'm not getting any younger, he laughed, and I want to be able to play catch with my son before I need a hip replacement. Definitely, I said, smiling up at him. I want that too. I didn't, at least not anytime soon, but Victor was already in his 40s. His timeline was different, so I lied. Just like I lied about loving his collection of vintage scotch and enjoying his friends' company. Little lies that made things easier. My bachelorette weekend was exactly what you'd expect. Penis-shaped everything, too many shots, and embarrassing stories from college. Saturday night, I was 5 drinks in, dancing with my cousin Sophia in Las Vegas, when I saw him, not Daniel, just some guy who looked exactly like him from behind. My heart literally stopped for a second. Later that night, back in our hotel suite, drunk and sprawled across my bed, I checked Daniel's Instagram again. And there it was, a post from 3 days ago, him looking stupidly good in a black t-shirt with the caption, "Single again." Sometimes things just don't work out. My fingers hovered over the screen. He'd been in a relationship with who? I scrolled back and found photos from the last few months with some brunette girl I didn't recognize. I felt this weird mix of jealousy and relief, like, who was this girl he'd been serious enough with to post about? And also, why was I even caring? I was getting married in 2 weeks. Stalking the ex? Lila's voice made me jump. I dunno, I said later. I've been wondering if I'm making a huge mistake. Like I'm on this path and everyone's cheering me on, but deep down, I'm screaming. Clara, Lila's voice was careful. Do you love Victor? Of course I do, I said automatically. The way you love Daniel? I flinched. That was different. That was unhealthy. The night before the wedding, my parents hosted a rehearsal dinner at this ridiculously expensive restaurant in San Francisco. Victor kept his hand on my lower back all night, introducing me as the future Mrs. Langston with this proud smile that made me feel like a prize he'd won. Later, in our hotel suite, Victor fell asleep almost immediately. I stood on the balcony, staring at the city lights. My engagement ring felt heavy on my hand. In less than 24 hours, I'd be married to a man I respected, a man who could give me everything I'd ever wanted, a man I wasn't sure I loved. I pulled out my phone, opened another bottle of champagne from the pre-wedding gift basket, and made the worst decision of my life. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Daniel's name. I'd never deleted it, just buried it under "Do Not Answer." I typed out a text, "Getting married tomorrow but still love you." My thumb hovered over the send button. In the bedroom, Victor shifted in his sleep, the man who wanted to give me everything, the man I was disappointing with every breath. I pressed send. Then I immediately had a full-blown panic attack. What had I done? I tried to unsend it, but it was too late. Those little dots appeared, showing he was typing, then disappeared, then nothing. No response. The wedding day passed in a blur. I kept checking my phone when no one was looking, still nothing from Daniel. I said my vows on autopilot, promising to love and cherish a man whose touch sometimes made my skin crawl. At the reception, I danced and laughed and accepted congratulations, all while checking my phone whenever I could slip away to the bathroom. Later that night, in the honeymoon suite, I let my new husband make love to me. I closed my eyes and thought about the mortgage on our new house, the luxury car he'd surprised me with, the stability of never having to worry about money again. The next morning, we left for our honeymoon, 2 weeks in Bali, staying in one of those overwater bungalows you see on Instagram. As our plane took off, Victor squeezed my hand. To our future, Mrs. Langston. For the first few days in paradise, I almost convinced myself I'd made the right decision. The resort was breathtaking. Victor was attentive, taking dozens of photos of me for my Instagram. Until our 4th day. We were getting ready for dinner when Victor called out, "Babe, can I use your phone?" "Mine's dead, and I want to take a photo of the sunset." "Sure," I called back, not thinking anything of it. I heard him go quiet, too quiet. When I stepped out of the bathroom, Victor was sitting on the edge of our bed, my phone in his hand, his face ashen. He turned the phone toward me. There it was, in all its damning glory, my text to Daniel, "Getting married tomorrow but still love you," and below it, Daniel's red receipt from 3 days ago. No response, just seen. Care to explain this? Victor's voice was dangerously calm. I can explain, I said automatically, though I absolutely could not explain in any way that wouldn't make things worse. Please do, he said. I'm fascinated to hear why my wife texted her ex that she loves him the night before our wedding. It was just cold feet, I stammered. Pre-wedding jitters. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? Victor's voice rose. You told another man you love him the night before you vowed to love me forever. It was a mistake, I cried. I was drunk and scared and thinking about another man. Victor finished. Do you know what this feels like? To find out my wife of 4 days, is in love with someone else. I'm not in love with him, I lied. It was a moment of weakness. Victor stood up, pacing our luxury bungalow. Did you marry me, Clara? Or did you marry my money, my lifestyle, my security, while your heart stayed with him? The accuracy of his words felt like a slap. That's not fair, I whispered. Not fair? He laughed bitterly. You know what's not fair? Making me believe you loved me. For the next few days, we went through the motions of a honeymoon. Victor was cordial in public, but barely spoke to me when we were alone. He started checking my movements, installed a tracking app on my phone so we can find each other at the resort, but we both knew the real reason. By the time we boarded our flight home to Seattle, we were strangers wearing matching wedding bands. Our first week back was a nightmare of therapy appointments and tense conversations. Victor had found this marriage counselor in Olympia who specialized in betrayal trauma. Dr. Harper suggested open phone policies, shared passwords, and check-ins throughout the day. Isn't that a little excessive? I asked. It was one text, one mistake. One text that revealed deeper feelings, Dr. Harper said. And so began my life under surveillance. Victor installed this tracking app on my phone. I had to share my passwords for everything. He'd check my phone randomly, scrolling through my texts and calls while I sat there trying not to look guilty about innocent conversations. We moved into the new house in Bellevue, but it didn't feel like a home. Victor converted the guest room into his office bedroom, saying he needed space to process. Things got worse when Victor started questioning our finances. He'd always been generous, paying for everything without question. Now every purchase was scrutinized. "Do you really need another dress?" he'd ask. "You already have a closet full." "I thought you liked when I dressed nicely," I'd respond, confused by this new frugality. "I like knowing my wife isn't using me as an ATM while pining for another man," he'd snap back. About 2 months after our return, I was cleaning out Victor's home office when I found a stack of financial documents. Curious, I started reading through them. Victor was in debt, serious debt, like millions of dollars kind of debt. There were bank statements showing massive loans, investment reports with negative returns, even a letter from a collection agency. I confronted him that night, waving the papers in his face. "What is this? Are we broke?" "It's complicated," Victor said. "I have some investments that are underwater right now. Property development isn't always straightforward." "Underwater, Victor? There's a letter here about defaulting on a loan." "It's temporary," he insisted. "The market will turn around. My properties will regain value." But all I heard was that the security I'd married him for might be an illusion. After that revelation, I started thinking about exit strategies, about what my life would look like without Victor. And then, like the universe was testing me, Daniel texted back. It was a random Tuesday evening. Victor was working late, and I was half-heartedly scrolling through Netflix when my phone buzzed. "Sorry for the delayed response. Been going through some stuff. I think about you too." Bad timing always was our thing. My heart raced as I read it over and over. After all this time, over 2 months since my wedding, he was responding like no time had passed, like I hadn't married someone else. I knew I should ignore it, delete it, tell Victor about it immediately. Instead, I texted back, "I didn't think you'd ever respond." Over the next few months, my double life became almost normal. By day, I was the dutiful wife trying to save her marriage. By night, when Victor was working late or asleep, I was texting Daniel from a secret app one downloaded. I told myself it was harmless, just talking, just remembering what it felt like to be myself without walking on eggshells. 6 months into our marriage, things came to a head. Victor came home early from a business trip I thought would last all weekend. I was in our bedroom, FaceTiming with Daniel. Victor walked in just as Daniel was saying, "You know, if things were different." I slammed my laptop shut, but it was too late. "I knew it," Victor said quietly. I checked the phone records. All those calls to a number I didn't recognize. "Victor, it's not what you think, isn't it?" he interrupted. "Because what I think is that my wife has been having an emotional affair with her ex while I've been trying to save our marriage and my business." "We're just friends," I insisted. "We talk sometimes, that's all." Behind my back, Victor said. He tossed his suitcase onto the bed. "Pack what you need for tonight. You can come back for the rest tomorrow when I'm at work." "You're kicking me out?" I gasped. "This is my home too." "Is it?" "You've spent our entire relationship with one foot out the door. You can't just throw me out," I argued, suddenly terrified. "Where would I go? What would I do?" "Actually, I can," Victor said. "Check the prenup you signed but never read. This house is mine. Most of everything is mine." I spent that night at Lila's place in Tacoma, sobbing on her couch. When I finally got a copy of the prenup from Victor's lawyer, I realized just how screwed I was. I get next to nothing in a divorce, especially one where I was at fault. The prenup had ironclad infidelity clauses. Panic set in. I'd quit my job 3 months into our marriage because Victor wanted me to focus on setting up our home. I had no income, no savings of my own. In desperation, I reached out to Daniel. Everything's fallen apart. Victor found out about us talking. He's kicked me out. Daniel's response was not what I expected. That's rough, but maybe it's for the best. How is this for the best? I demanded. I'm about to lose everything. You're free, he replied, from a marriage you didn't seem happy in. I'm homeless and broke, I corrected. Can we meet? Talk about this in person. I think that might not be a good idea right now. I'm kind of seeing someone new, and with all your drama, I just think we both need space. I stared at Lila's phone in disbelief. All those late-night conversations, the what-ifs, and now he was kind of seeing someone new after leading me on for months? In a last desperate attempt to salvage something, I drove to our house in Bellevue when I knew Victor would be home. I found him in the kitchen, looking tired. Let me guess, he said. Daniel didn't want you after all, so now you're back to your fallback plan. The accuracy of his assessment left me speechless. We argued in circles for hours. Finally, Victor pulled out a folder and placed it on the kitchen counter, divorce papers. The terms are in line with the prenup you signed. I flipped through the documents. I would get almost nothing, a small cash settlement that wouldn't even cover 6 months of rent. Something in me snapped. All the fear and frustration and rejection boiled over. Fine, I shouted. You want the truth? I never loved you. Not the way you wanted. I tried, but do you know how boring it was listening to you talk about property values? How I had to force myself not to cringe when you touched me. I settled for you because you were safe and rich, and yes, I was still in love with Daniel, probably always will be. Are you happy now? Victor's face went completely blank. Get out, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Victor, I didn't mean yes, you did, he said. That's the first honest thing you've said to me in our entire relationship. Over the next few weeks, I spiraled. I drained what was left of the money I'd taken from our joint account on a crappy extended stay hotel in Spokane and too much wine. I sent pathetic texts to Daniel that went unanswered. In a moment of desperation, I drove by our house one night and saw Victor's car alongside another I didn't recognize. Through the window, I could see him with a woman around his age, laughing at something he said. The next morning, hungover and at rock bottom, I got a text from Daniel, please stop contacting me. I've blocked your number on my phone, but you keep using different numbers. This needs to stop. That same afternoon, I signed the divorce papers, legally ending a marriage that had barely begun. 2 weeks later, after missing my period and feeling constantly nauseous, I took a pregnancy test. It was positive. Given the timing, it had been months since I'd slept with Victor, but only weeks since my one desperate night with Daniel when I'd shown up at his apartment in Boise. There was no question who the father was. My first instinct was to call Victor, somehow convince him it was his baby, get back together, but even I couldn't stoop that low. So here I am now, alone in this cheap apartment in Yakima, pregnant with my ex-boyfriend's baby, divorced after 6 months of marriage. My parents are disappointed, my friends have mostly taken Victor's side, and Daniel blocked me when I tried to tell him about the pregnancy. The irony doesn't escape me. I spent years chasing passion with Daniel, then gave it up for security with Victor, only to throw away that security for the fantasy of Daniel. Now I have neither. Lila says this could be a turning point for me, a chance to finally grow up, take responsibility, make better choices. Maybe she's right. But right now, all I can think about is how unfair it all is, how I wasn't prepared for any of this, how the universe conspired to lead me down this path. Deep down, though, in the quiet moments when I'm honest with myself, I know the truth. I did this, all of it. Every selfish choice, every lie, every time I put my wants above everyone else's needs. This is the life I built, brick by painful brick. I just wish I'd realized what I was building before the walls came crashing down around me.